let's take a look at some monsters that we can make. So let's create a new node. We're going to make a kinematic body, not kinematic, character body. They changed the name. Let's add a collision shape to it so we don't get that error. And then let's give it a shape. We'll give it a little capsule. Let's zoom in and let's add a animated sprite. So this one is going to be a lot simpler than the actual player, so it's going to be a lot easier. So we can just do an animated sprite and no animation, hopefully. We'll go through it together and see what we end up with. So let's close all these and look for our froggy guys that we want. So here we have frog jump and frog idle. So let's go to the animated sprite. Let's go in here. Let's erase all this. Say idle, and then let's add jump. Let's see what else we have. And this little awesome guy kind of walking. You have a little enemy death. That's awesome. We can probably use that. Okay, let's add the jump in here. Oh, we can't do that. We have to actually, now we can use the animated sprite. So let's go here to the add frames. Let's find this guy. So let me actually look up here. So Sunny Sand files, it'll be in here, PNG, sprite sheet, and frog jump. Now, if I zoom in, it should just be 3 and 1. And now I can just select all of them. And let's go to idle. Let's go here and add the idle. This one will be 4 and 1. We can just do that and select all of them. And now we can kind of move this guy up a little bit. Let's turn off the grid snap or grid. And let's move it into the middle like that. Let's save this as frog. We'll put it in the main world. Let's save. And now what we can do is also add, let's add the death animation for now as well. So let's add death. Let's load the death animation. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 horizontal and 1 vertical. Let's select all of them. There we go. And now what we can do is go to our frog, rename it frog, and save it as frog. And we're not going to have a template this time. Instead, we're going to select the default. What this is going to do is just create this. We'll remove all this. Let's go to 2D. Let's go to our capsule. In fact, actually, let's change this to a square because there's something else I want to do later on. Let's add it like this, just like that. And now what we can do is we're going to add an area 2D. Now what an area 2D is essentially an area for detection, as well as physics and audio influence. So what we can do here is we can add a collision shape to it, and we can add a circle. And this will essentially act as our player detection. And now what we can do is add a node where we basically say, if a body entered, connect it, we'll do something. So now we can also say if body.name is equal to player, then we'll do something. Then we'll say print player, right? Because what this is going to do is we're going to ask, there's a lot of bodies that generally will enter this area, right? So if there's another frog that enters the area, that will count as a body. So we don't want to chase another frog. We want to chase the player. So the way we can do that is by checking the name of it. So if we can say .name is player, right? Make sure it's always case capital or case sensitive. So we can copy paste it just in case. Then we'll print player for now. So let's go to our scene. Let's go to our world and actually add our frog. So let's go over here, add our frog, and let's play. And he's not moving, obviously, but let's see what happens. I got to stop printing that thing. Let's stop printing the direction so we actually see what's happening. Let's try one more time. But now every time I enter him, it says player. And obviously, as you can see, we're on top of him. So let's actually add some gravity to him. So we can see here, this is how we add gravity. So let's actually do that. Let's go over here. Let's add a physics process function and add gravity. So let's add a comment too. Let's say this gravity for frog. And we have to actually set the gravity. So let's also do that. Let's bring this guy into the frog. So now we can add gravity to the frog. So now what we can do and check is take a look at our project, and our frog will not fall. Why is that? Let's take a look. Velocity plus equals gravity. Okay, so here I just realized we have to add move and slide for it to actually fall. So let's go to play. And now our frog actually falls to the ground. So because now he actually has gravity. All right, so the next thing we're going to want to do is actually do something when the player enters. So what we can do is essentially look for the player. So the first thing we want to do is go to our 2D and organize this a little bit. So let's add a node 2D, and this will be for the player. Let's add this in so we can actually name that player. And then let's add another node. Let's add a node 2D and say mobs. And we'll basically add frogs to this mobs. And now what we can do is go from the script and we'll drag in our player. And this is the path to our player. So what we can do here is say, let's say variable player outside. And then inside of here, we'll say player equals this. So that is the path to the player. Now what we can do or look to do is say player dot position or global position. All right, let's print this and see what we get. So let's say print global position. So now we're going to be able to actually find our player by getting his global position. And we have to actually convert it to a string because this is a vector. So let's play one more time. Or not. Global position. Did I spell it wrong? Okay, so this is actually getting a string. So we need to actually make sure we get the node. That's why. Okay, so we don't actually have to convert it to a string, I don't believe. So let's try this. Let's play, enter, and it'll print our position. So what we want to do is actually find the direction in which the player is in a response to where the player is or where the mob is, right? The way we can do that is basically saying variable direction equals, we're going to take the player direction, player dot position minus self dot position, right? So you don't actually have to say, let me make sure I type that in right, position. You don't actually have to say self, but it's nice kind of see that self dot. And then we're going to normalize this by saying dot normalized. And now what we can do is say if direction is greater than 0, we're going to actually only look at the dot x direction. So we'll say dot x is greater than 0. What we'll do is we'll actually see which direction it's in. So if it's greater than 0, that should mean we're on the right. Now, if we're on the other side, we'll say else and say, let's print this and say left. So now what we can do is print this or play and see what we get. So when I do this, I'm on the right, but if I enter from here, I'm on the left. Awesome. So now what we want to do is we want to actually be doing most of this on the other side, right? So what we can do is basically take all this and add it to the physics process. However, this might not work perfectly because what we want to do is actually, sorry, let's make sure we're not indented improperly here. There we go. What we want to be doing is basically chasing only if the player is here. So what we can do is add another variable and call it chase, and we'll default it to be false, right? So now if we enter, what we can do is say chase equals true. Now what we want to be able to do is say if chase is false, then we'll stop chasing, right? So now what we can say is go to the area 2D, we'll go to the node and we'll say body exit, and we'll copy paste all this and just say false if the player left the area, right? And make sure it's indented properly, otherwise we'll get an error. Awesome. And now what's going to be happening is it's always going to be getting the direction of the player, but it'll only chase if chase is true, right? So now what we can do is say in here, we'll say if chase is true, then we'll actually chase. So let's print chase right. Okay. And to do that, what we can do is actually very simple. We'll just change the velocity of the actual frog. So to do that, we can just say velocity.x equals direction.x times speed. So we have to actually make sure we set the speed. So let's go over here and set the speed to 50. Awesome. So now that we have the direction and the speed, we can do that. And what we can do is we can actually just do this outside of the direction. However, the direction is useful because what's going to be happening is we're going to want to flip the actual character, right? So what we can do is say in here, let's actually add this right here. Let's do this. Let's add all that. And then we'll say if chase is true, then we'll do all this. And then if the direction is on the right, what we can do is we're not going to change the velocity. We're going to say get node animated sprite dot flip h equals false, right? Because on the right side, oh no, sorry, we want it to be true because he's facing the left by default. So true. And then on the other one, if he's facing the left, then we'll make it false. So here we'll make it false, just like that. Okay, great. So now let's play and see what we got. So now you can see he's chasing us whenever we enter. So hopefully if I exit, it should stop or not. Okay, let's take a look at what's going on. Okay, I see. We got to actually reset the velocity. So if chase is not true, what we'll do is we'll say velocity.x is equal to 0. So let's play and try one more time. And now when I go in his area, he's going to chase me. But when I leave, he's going to stop because the velocity is now 0. Okay. Next up, we are going to basically animate him. So what's happening here? If chase is true, then we'll get node and play the animation. So we'll say get node animated sprite dot play. What did I name it? We got to make sure that I type it right. Jump. We'll say play jump. And then if it's not true, then what we can do is play idle. So let's play. Let's play and see what's going on. All right, so by default, he's playing the little frog thing. So what we can do is kind of slow that down, make it look a little better. So let's go into our idle. And what we can do is copy this by saying Control C and then copy paste it a few times after. So now what it'll look like, a little better. It'll kind of do that little frog thing and then pause for a sec. Now what we can do is enter. It'll start jumping and running towards us. Let's increase the area a little bit because it's kind of small. All right, let's take a look at what we got. All right, I think we got to restart it in order for it to take effect. There we go. So now it's chasing us. And when I flip, it'll start chasing us towards the other side. Awesome. So now what we can do is we're going to add another player detection or another area. So let's make this invisible. We're going to add another collision shape, basically. So we're going to duplicate this. And we're going to say player death. We're going to make this visible. We're going to actually create a new thing. So let's actually just reset this and create a rectangle. So let's put this on the top. Now this is very important that we actually make this collision proper. And we want to put it on the top of the frog right here. Like that. And now what we can do is we have to disconnect these, then reconnect them because we've changed the name. So it's going to make it a new one. And then what we'll say is we'll check to see if body.name is equal player. Then what we can do is basically just queue_free. Now what queue_free will do is just delete the player. So, or delete the frog itself. So now what's going to happen is we're going to jump on top of the frog. Hopefully I can do that. Oop. There we go. And then he dies. So what we can do instead is play the animation death. So let's do that by saying get node animated sprite and play death. Now you might notice this might not be perfect because something's going to happen. It's going to delete right away. It's not going to work. Let's try it one more time. There we go. It didn't play the animation, but it did. What happened is it did. However, it's queuing free right away. So what we can do is say await animated. We have to get the node, get node animated sprite. And then what await does is it's essentially going to wait for something to happen. It's going to wait for a signal. So the signal we're waiting for is if we go to player death, we can go to, animated sprite. We can see that there's a bunch of signals here. We're going to look for the animation finished. So we can type in animation finished. And we don't have to type it in like this. We just have to type it in like that. And now it'll wait for it to finish and then it'll queue free. So now if we go to the death, okay, it's 5 FPS, that's fine. Let's play and see what we got. So let's have him chase us. Hopefully it works or not. Okay, so what was happening, the reason why it's not playing death is because we are always going to be overriding it with this. So what we want to do is we want to go over here and say if get node, we'll say if get node dot, what was it? I think it was animation is equals death. Then we're going to do this. We're going to say not equals death. And that should hopefully work. So now we're going to also add this to the jump one. So let's add it here. Make sure I don't have any errors. Okay, so we just had to restart the game and it'll work. So now we can see that it's playing and then it'll play idle. And then when I jump on top of it, it's going to play death, but it's going to constantly play it. So what we can do to fix that, it's actually very simple. We go over here and turn off the loop in the death. So it'll finish and then it'll queue free. So let's try one more time. Okay, we got to make sure that we have the idle selected. We'll fix that in a second. I'll show you how to fix that. So play, we'll jump on top of him, he'll play the death animation and disappear. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is let's make sure that we're always playing the idle at ready. So let's say function ready. We'll say get node animated thingy majiggy and play idle. So now that'll always default to the idle animation by when we are in the ready. So here, another thing we want to start doing is two things. Let's first make sure that he's staying still. And then let's also say chase equals false. I actually don't think we need to make the velocity equals 0. We can just remove that and say this. And now when he's chasing us, and then when I jump on top of him, he'll just explode and die. All right, let's make the explosion slightly faster. So let's go here, animate sprite, and we'll go to death and say 10. Or we'll do like, let's do 8. I think 8 is good. And now let's also add something so that when the player hits him, he also explodes, but does damage to the player. So to do that, what we're going to want to do is add health to the player. So let's add health. There we go. And we'll say equals 10. Now, we want to actually be able to see that. So let's add a UI for this. So let's add a canvas layer. And this canvas layer is going to act as our UI. So let's add UI and rename it as UI. Didn't mean to do that. Let's add a label to print out our HP. And this, let's rename it to HP. We're going to add a script. It's going to be built in because this is very simple. Let's go to the process function. And what we'll say is text equals get node. We want to get the player dot health. Let's make sure we type this all out properly. We get the node. We're going to say this, and then we're going to convert it to a string. And then let's also add a text that says, whoops, HP. We'll say HP for now. And then add a space and then maybe something call in there. So that way we have HP and then the player's health. Okay, so now in our 2D scene, let's move this guy a little bit to the left. And then let's go to theme override. We're going to go to font. No, not font. Size. Here we go. Font size. And let's increase it a bit. So let's say HP. So we can see HP right there. Let's increase the size just slightly so we can see it. And then we're also going to change the color to font. So we're just going to make that true. And let's play and let's see what we get. We now have our HP on the top. Now what we want to do is basically go to the frog. And now what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate the player death. And we're going to say player collision. Now this guy is going to actually be very simple. We're going to flip him. Let's actually go to the animated sprite. Let's play the idle so we can see the frog. Let's go to the collision. Let's make it unique. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it slightly bigger than the collision shape of the actual frog. So we want to do it like that, but not too big because if the player touches this, they're going to explode and damage the player. So let's do this. And let's actually add a collision. Let's add the thing to it. So the signal. So let's disconnect it and then reconnect it because we changed the name. And then again, we have to check if it's the player. And this one is actually very simple because all we can do or have to do is just do the exact same thing here. So let's copy paste this. And then we'll just say body.health minus equals, let's say 3. So it'll damage the player by 3. In fact, what we can actually do is take all this and let's actually create a separate function and say function death. And let's add it in there. And then I can just call death from here. And then I can also call death from here instead. So now we've shortened our code quite a bit. Okay, let's play and see what we got. Let's play. If I jump on top of him, I don't take damage, but now if I play again and I run into him, I take damage. So you saw that HP went down by 3. Awesome. We now have a really well platform. It's pretty cool. We can now jump around and run away. And if I jump on top of him or hit him, I take damage. So if you want, you can increase the area as much as you want. So you can kind of increase it like this if you'd like, kind of increase it above, just like that. It's up to you. So we can do that, whatever you want. So I would encourage you to play around with the collisions. So it's very important that we actually have that, the proper collisions. So one more thing we're going to want to do is in our player, let's actually go to the process function and we'll add a new thing where we're going to say if health is smaller than 0, or we'll say smaller than or equal to, then we're just going to queue free because, you know, we don't want our player to exist even though our health is low, right? And then what we can do is go back to the main menu. So we can say get tree dot change scene to file and go back to the main scene. So in here, nope, that's it. Let's add a few more frogs. So we can duplicate this a few times and kind of just drop them wherever you want. Make sure they're in the world. There we go. And now when we play and I hit them all and I die, I go back to the main scene.